Ron Schutz, who is running for Minnesota Attorney General. I'm just going to read their intros for you. He is frequently recognized as one of the top lawyers in the country. He was named to Forbes' inaugural list of America's top 200 lawyers in both 2024 and 2025. Ron began his career by serving as a military lawyer in the United States Army, JAG Corps, where he prosecuted felony court martial laws, and now for over 2 decades, he has been included in the list of Minnesota's super lawyers, and most years has been listed among the top 10 super lawyers in the state. Though currently serving as a board member of the Center for the American Experiment, a member of the Federalist Society since 1993, advisor to Upper Midwest Law Center, who we've had them speak here before too as well. Ron Schutz has decided to step from advisor to active participant by running for Attorney General of Minnesota. So, Ron, why don't you come on up?
Thank you, Dad. So the first thing is the guy who ran last time, his name was Schutz, almost like mine, S-C-H-U-L-T-Z. I have no L in my name. So I'm trying by the end of the campaign, everybody does this. By the end of the campaign, people will have my name down is Schutz, S-C-H-U-T-Z. So thanks for the kind introduction. What I'll do is give you a little bit of a background again. I'll flesh out some of the things that Dieta said. I'm a lifelong Minnesotan. I was born and raised here. I grew up on a dairy farm in the southwestern part of the state. If you go all the way south to Interstate 90, head west, stop about 40 miles before you hit Sioux Falls, there's a town there called Adrian. When I grew up on a dairy farm outside of Adrian, went to a small town high school. The typical, I think there were 74 kids or 78 kids in my high school class, kind of a typical small town high school existence, played some sports. But we didn't have a lot of money. I was fortunate to get a 4-year Army ROTC scholarship. I used that to go to Marquette University in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where I got a degree in mechanical engineering. After I graduated from Marquette, I went to the University of Minnesota Law School, got my law degree there, and then I went into the Army and spent 4 years in the Army Judge Advocate General's Corps, which is those are the Army's lawyers. And I spent the first part of my career as a defense lawyer and the second half of the 4 years I was in as a prosecutor. Almost all the cases were felony level cases. I was at a base with the 7th Infantry Division, so there were like 20,000 infantry troops there, and we prosecuted all crimes that any of the service members committed on post. Well, when you got a lot of testosterone-charged 18 to 20-year-olds, and you got a big population like that, you're going to have problems. And the cases typically were assault cases, rape cases, some larceny cases, drug cases. On the defense side, I did have a murder case. On the prosecution side, several rape cases, some child molestation cases. Those were really hard. But it was a great experience and served me well through the rest of my career. When I got out, we were stationed in California, Fort Ord, California. When I got out, my wife and I got married in between my junior and senior year of college to my high school sweetheart, Janet. She's the co-campaign manager on the campaign right now and has really been responsible for keeping me on track during the course of this campaign. Janet and I came back to Minnesota with 2 of our 3 children. 2 were born in Army Hospital in Fort Ord. Came back here. I spent most of my career in private practice, when I got out, in private practice at a large law firm in downtown Minneapolis, 200-lawyer law firm. I resigned from it in February to concentrate on running for Attorney General. But while I was there, my practice was basically complex litigation. Because I have an engineering degree, I did a lot of patent litigation. So it was technical, very technical, complicated stuff where most of the time I represented either individuals or small companies against corporate giants. I've taken on the likes of the entire MRI industry because I represented the inventor of the MRI industry, Dr. Raymond Damadian, God bless his soul, God rest his soul, he's passed away. But we sued everybody in the MRI industry, General Electric, Siemens, Hitachi, Philips. You just go on with all these major multinational corporations that we asserted Dr. Damadian's patents against them successfully. One case, I won $110 million, and it basically saved the company. It injected that money into the company that had been crushed by these bigger corporations. But I've also sued a lot of tech companies, the Microsofts, the Amazon, the Samsungs, the Sonys, the Canons of the world. One of the things that the Democrats are going to try to do in this election is just paint me as fancy big firm lawyer who, represented corporate America. Well, from time to time, I would represent some larger corporations because they're entitled to lawyers too, and they want to hire the best lawyers, and I ended up getting hired by some of those folks. But I would say the vast majority of the cases I had were representing the little guy against major corporations. I ultimately became chairman of this 200-lawyer law firm from 2019 to 2024, and at that point, I went through what a lot of people do when they're at kind of my stage in life where you've reached the pinnacle of your profession or you've been a CEO or the head of a company, and it's time to move on from that, but you've got a lot of energy. I knew there was another chapter in my life. I just wasn't exactly sure what it was. I'd been around politics a long time. I was the chair of the Judicial Selection Commission for Tim Pawlenty when he was governor, and worked with Governor Pawlenty to appoint 104 district court judges and 4 of 7 Supreme Court, Minnesota Supreme Court justices. And I'd been approached to run for public office several times in the past, but the timing was never quite right. Well, now having stepped down as chairman of my law firm, and at this stage of my life, the timing was right. So that's why, one of the reasons I ran for Attorney General. I mean, if the state were all hunky-dory and everything was fine, I wouldn't need to have done that. But as you all know, and one of the reasons you're sitting here right now, is it's a mess out there. It's a mess out there. Somebody has to step up to the plate and do something about it. I've always been a doer, and I'm not afraid of doing hard things. I've done hard things all my life, everything from trials to some of the physical marathons, mountain climbing, other things I've done in life. And so this was not intimidating in terms of the challenge. It's a lot of work, and as this campaign goes on, people are going to say bad things about me. And I can't remember who the politician was years ago. I was at an event, something like this, where he was talking, and it was in the throes of the campaign, and he said, the things they're saying about me are so bad, my wife sleeps with one eye open, okay? So we may get to that at some point in the campaign, but I take a lot of comfort in the fact that my friends and family, love me and support me, and they know who I really am, and they won't believe all the bad things that are going to be said about me. Let me talk now a little bit about the major issues in the campaign, and I'll go a little deeper than I usually do when I just have 5 minutes and I'm at a convention event where I just don't have time to go deep. But what I want you to have when you leave here is some ammunition. All right, when you're out there talking to your friends, your neighbors, your coworkers, other people in the place of worship, and you talk about the Attorney General's race, I'm going to give you some specifics that you can use to have a rational discussion and convince them that we need to fire Keith Ellison and hire me. Okay? So let's start with an issue that everybody's campaigning on, and that's fraud. All right? We have a massive fraud problem in the state, and we've had it for a long time. And it really started ramping up 2017, 2018, 2019, Well, Keith Ellison came in office. He was elected in 2018, all right? He is going to try to convince people that he is now a fraud fighter. I mean, that's what he's going to try to convince people. And if somebody says that to you, you have to say, well, wait a minute. Where's he been the last 8 years, okay? We've had billions of dollars stolen from taxpayers in this state, and where has he been? He can't now come to the forefront and claim he's a fraud fighter, because that's a joke. It's just an absolute joke. Yes, he prosecutes a fraud case here or there if some investigators plop the file on his desk. But take the Feeding Our Future fraud scandal, for example. That was all done by the feds. And a lot of this other stuff is done by the feds. I saw recently where he said, well, that's the feds, because they have more power to do that. Well, that, again, is a bunch of hogwash. The Attorney General has broad investigatory powers to ferret out fraud and be proactive. The other thing that is, I don't know if it's unique to Minnesota, but the way we're set up, the Attorney General is the primary regulator of the state's nonprofits. And a lot of the fraud's been committed by nonprofit entities. The Attorney General has free reign to investigate nonprofits. He can go in, look at the books, start taking depositions of people, and shut them down if they're engaged in fraud. He hasn't done that. You're all probably, I'm going to keep an eye on the time, you're probably all aware that he had a meeting with the fraudsters in December 2021. Detta mentioned the Center of the American Experiment, an organization on whose board I've been sit for 18 years, has obtained a secret recording where he's meeting with the soon-to-be indicted fraudsters and offered to help them. If I had more time, I could walk you through more real interesting things in the transcript of that meeting, but that will have to wait for another day. So that's on the fraud. Just give you a little ammunition on the fraud stuff. The other thing is he's a charter member of the anti-police movement. Just to be blunt, he hates cops. He always has, and he hates cops. Back after the George Floyd riots, in the fall of 2021, the city of Minneapolis, the city council, those of you out here, God bless you, you're somewhat insulated from the craziness that goes on in the city of Minneapolis. We have a communist city council. I mean, literally, a Democrat, Socialist of America, communist city council. And they proposed an amendment to the city charter that would have done two things. The first thing the amendment would have done was eliminate the numerical requirement that there be a certain number of police officers per population city of Minneapolis. Because there's a requirement. You got X number of people, you got to have Y number of police officers. That would be eliminated. The second thing it would have done is abolish the Minneapolis Police Department and replace it with a so-called Department of Public Safety, which, and this is language right out of the proposed charter amendment, which could, if necessary, have licensed police officers. Well, that was their entree to completely defund the police. Keith Ellison stumped the campaign trail for months seeking to get that passed. But even the people of the city, for the people of the city of Minneapolis, that was a bridge too far. They refused to vote for that. It went down 56% no vote, so it didn't pass. So when Keith Ellison claims, as he tries to do from time to time, that he was never in favor of defunding the police, it's a lie. It's just a flat-out lie. All right, and we've got copies of speeches. I mean, he can't run away from it, the fact that he voted for this. The other issue that is central to our campaign is getting back to having fairness in girls' sports. As I frequently say when I'm out on the campaign trail, I plan on restoring some common sense to the Office of Attorney General, where the criminals are the bad guys, the cops are the good guys, and boys are boys and girls are girls. Amen. He has led the legal fight that forced girls to have to compete against boys. And here's how he's done it. Back in February of 2025, a little over a year ago, he issued an Attorney General opinion, which is within the power of the Attorney General to do if asked by a state agency. He was asked by the Minnesota State High School League whether they had to allow boys who identified as girls to play on girls' sports teams. He issues a 4-page legal opinion saying that under the Minnesota Human Rights Act, if a boy who identifies as a girl wants to play in the girls' sports teams, you have to allow it. If when I was in private practice, a young lawyer would have put that legal opinion on my desk, I would have fired them. It is the worst, actually deceptive piece of legal work that I have ever seen in my life. If it were submitted to a court, he would be sanctioned by the judge for that. And let me tell you why. The Minnesota Human Rights Act, 60, you can print it out. If you print it out, it's like 60 pages, okay, single-spaced. Very extensive. But if you read through it, there is a specific section titled Exceptions. And it's Minnesota Statutes, Chapter 363A.23 is the statutory section. It has a specific exception for sports teams, for educational sports teams, not high school sports teams. And it says, and this is really what's important about this, because in lawyerese, when you have statutes that start out by saying, notwithstanding any other provision of this statute or any other law, that's basically saying we the legislature, in adopting this language, it overrides everything. No matter what any other statute or law says, when it starts out with that notwithstanding any other law language, and it goes on to say that educational institutions can have single-sex sports teams. Not gender, sex. And there's a difference between sex and gender. And they'd like to say sex and gender are the same. They are not legally the same, and they're not the same even under the definitional sections of the Minnesota Human Rights Act. The first thing that I will do when I get in office is I will revoke that Attorney General opinion and issue a new one. That's the very first thing I'm going to do, all right? He's also, the Trump administration has recently sued the Minnesota State High School League for violating Title IX for this very thing. And we'll see how that works its way through the court system, but the case should resolve the way I've just laid it out from a legal perspective, all right? So that's basically, the major issues. There are, other, issues that I could get into, but in the interest of time and everything, I think I'll probably stop my remarks now and turn it back to Dieta. And I understand we're going to have a Q&A section later. So if there are some things that are in particular that you all are interested in, I hope that you'll ask those questions when we get to the Q&A section.